Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you could pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Back this week after a 1-week hiatus, Erik Beimfohr ranting and raving about best ball on Twitter. I'm playing soccer, right? We're doing a lot of different stuff. It's the dog days of sports. We got some playoffs, showdown stuff, I guess, for NBA. I'm not doing that, but at some point, you just roster the guys off the street because that's all that's going to be left playing basketball by the end by the end of this. But you've been doing best ball. I've been doing some soccer stuff. It's been hard to play some of these soccer slates since I do a show at 11 in the morning, and that's when the starting lineups come out for the 12 o'clock game. So kind of these smaller slates I have not played. But we still got baseball. And do you notice anything? Okay, the two things. One, now that we're hitting the summer, now that pitchers are getting, like, these spin rates are coming down, offenses are going up. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Offense around the league. How does that affect your lineup building strategies and the stacks you select and the pitchers you select coming into, especially on larger slates? We had a 15-game slate yesterday as a recording. That's one thing. And the second thing, it's a little more facetious, is how frustrating has it been the past 2 weeks to just like a batter's 22% owned and it's like why don't everyone's just preloading Kyle Schwarber and Shohei Ohtani into their lineups no matter what the ownership is, and they just get there and just it doesn't matter, they get there anyway. I mean that's there's no point in really talking about that. It's just, that's short-term variance. But do you think that with offenses around the league now coming up, we're seeing these totals in these games coming up, the heat's coming in, the pitchers are a little bit less effective, is it necessarily affecting your lineup building strategy? Because I think field-wise, it hasn't. Yet I think there should still be considerations. Because these are the two reverse opinions. Like the reverse ways to think about it, Erik. One, offense is up across the board. That means it makes a lot more stacks viable. Meaning it gives you more paths to win. So on a even not a 15-game slate, let's say it's a 10-game slate. There are 20 teams. It's quite possible that there will be multiple teams that could make up a first-place lineup. That, like, I'm going to stack the Astros, and they're going to score 12 runs, and everyone else is going to score 5. Well, there may be 5 teams on the slate that score 9+ runs, and the winning lineup could be any one of those stacks. Probably a combination of two of them. But because of that, that gives us more likelihood of rostering offenses and not caring that much about pitcher, right? You just go, whatever pitchers I take, whatever, I care more about the offenses. But the other reverse opinion is, if there's a lot more offense, that means there's a lot more pitchers with lower scores. And since you play 2 pitchers on DraftKings and 1 pitcher on FanDuel, the slot, you have to play them, and those slots contribute to your score, that it makes it more important to get the pitchers right. Because you can get the bats wrong, because you can get the bats, quote, wrong and still get there, right? You don't have the highest scoring team, but you have the second highest scoring team that also has a guy with 2 home runs and this other guy with a stolen bit. Like, you didn't need the hot, because there's going to be multiple of them. So the pitching, it's more important to get, if you could get 60 points out of both of your pitchers combined, right? You get a 32 and a 28. Like, that's going to help you more than getting, the exact 8 bats right on your DraftKings lineup. But some people would say the opposite, say, well, now you have to play the garbage pitchers, because if everyone's going to score around 15 on average, they may not be a 30-point scoring pitcher.
It really is. I think it's like the defining kind of conversation of MLB DFS as it stands right now. And I don't know that I have a strong take. I might, day to day, my opinion might change, but I also do think that that's kind of important too, right? So, because I think back to one of the better days I had recently, I did probably win because I nailed the two of the pitchers. There were actually a few on that slate. It was one of the rare slates where there were, I think, 3 or maybe even 4 pitchers that scored like 30 plus points. But I think it was, you brought it up before we started recording. Charlie Morton destroyed the Mets because the Mets are just so god awful. I didn't play him, but Freddie Peralta put up like 38 against the Diamondbacks, and Anthony Desclafani put up like 35 against the Angels, who also really, really suck, by the way. I don't think that's another team. Maybe we'll get to some of the trends that people aren't picking up on. But, you know, my stacks were okay. Like, I mean, I had the best stack that night, but like my 3-man that I attached to it, frankly, wasn't very good, but I hit those pitchers, and so much of the field, I think it was another Garrett Cole slate, if I remember correctly, and people are still playing Garrett Cole, right? And he scored like 13 points. So I just beat such a huge portion of the field by nailing pitching that I didn't have to be perfect, especially in the fields that I'm playing in. At those, you still have to hit your stack, right? But I didn't have to be perfect with my offense because there are so few pitching scores that you can, really distance yourself on the field from. However, there are other slates like they're all really starting to run together. But like was it 2 nights ago that it was Bauer and Peralta? I think again there were only 2 spend ups, and a lot of people were doing the double spend up thing, and the rest of the field was just so bad that everybody was playing those guys. But even then, they didn't distance themselves, right? If you got like 12 points from a pitcher on that slate, it didn't matter if you spent 4,000 and you got 12 points. It didn't matter because you weren't losing like hardly anything at pitcher because the highest scores were like 20 points. And I do really believe that is probably more frequently going to be the case, where like the pitching doesn't matter concept. And it's funny because that's kind of like how I've played a really long time when pricing was more efficient on hitters, particularly on DraftKings. Like that's kind of how I always played. I rostered these scrub pitchers and just bet on that concept that none of these pitchers, even the Garrett Coles, whatever, aren't going to distance themselves so much that when I go get this guy that's cheap and scores 15 to 20, I'm going to destroy you with bats, right? Because I have Trout, whatever. It's a little bit of a different with the, that we've talked about many a time with the pricing on both of these sites for hitters. But I think it's a long-winded way of saying every slate is going to be a little bit different. And like when we do have, a 15-game slate and the 7K pitchers are, I don't know. Sometimes we're seeing like Alex Wood is your 7K pitcher, or like I thought Desclafani was actually is a fine enough pitcher and was in a good matchup. There's some of those where like your cheap guys are those guys, and then there's some of them where your cheap guys are what's his name, Eli Morgan. I had never even heard of Eli Morgan until like a week ago, and he was the chalk cheap guy, because he was playing the Tigers. It's like sometimes you're getting that, and sometimes you're getting like actually decent pitchers down there. So I do think it's a little bit of a slate to slate thing, but I would say if I'm putting like a total ballpark number, it's probably like 80-20, where like I don't really give a shit about these pitchers. Nobody's going to distance themselves. So let me prioritize whatever bats I think are, the most plus EV for that slate.
Yeah, what I've been concentrating more on, I've been using my NBA mentality more so, because obviously this year that the vomit stack type of mentality doesn't work anymore when people are jamming in
Yep.
double aces and playing cheap bats that are on good teams and still underpriced. So I
Yep.
need to do something different. So I've been playing these diamond stacks, as I call them. But now the NBA mentality, how I've won GPPs in NBA, or how I primarily play NBA, is play good players at low ownership. Now that sounds like obvious. Obviously, you want to play good players at low ownership. No, I'm talking about good players that aren't projected as well as other players on the slate, but have raw like they're good players, right? Everyone's playing this guard. I'm playing Bradley Beal at 4% owned, right? I'm playing
Yep.
Jimmy Butler at 8% owned, right? Everyone's playing Giannis, and I'm playing, Sabonis is 11% owned on that slate, or something. Whatever the context of the slate makes it. Maybe because one guy is more underpriced and one guy isn't. But see, that doesn't affect the ceilings. So on these slates, because you could go from the mentality that offense is up, even the crappiest teams could put up runs. But when offense is up, to me, all that does is increase the ceilings of the good offenses.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I don't think in terms of, well, today the Tigers on a normal day would put up 4 runs, but maybe they put up 7 today. It's like, no, I'm looking at the team. I'm looking at the Dodgers, who they could put up 5 runs, but if they could put up 14 runs today. So, like, I'm looking specifically towards, like, what I did yesterday in my set. I'm like, yeah, I could play the Diamondbacks. Why am I playing a bad? Well, I could play the Mets. I could play those teams, but also you have to understand those teams, they're cheaper and they tend to lead to the same type of builds where you're playing the 2 chalk pitchers or some chalky pitcher combination as it is. So I'm looking for, like, dude, if I can get the Dodgers at 4% owned, 2% owned, why not? Oh, but Kevin Gausman's on the mound. Yeah, but isn't offense up across the board and spin rates are down? So who cares, right? The Twins against Giolito, and especially if some of these pitchers are chalky, then you get relative value from playing these teams. As long as it's a good offense. Like there's a big difference between playing a fully healthy Twins. I'm going to put that caveat. Like if Buxton was back, and I mean sometimes these Twins lineups at the bottom could look really bad.
Pretty bad, yeah.
Right, but there's a difference between that and playing even the fully healthy Mariners. Right? Even the fully healthy Royals. Like the bottom of that order is kind of sketchy as it is, right?
Yep.
But to me, I can't go wrong playing the Blue Jays. Like I don't even care who they're facing. As long as it's not like Jacob deGrom, as long as it's not like high end stuff, like an average pitcher, I'd much rather everyone's going to be playing the Astros against the Orioles pitching staff. And why not play the Blue Jays? How about the Red Sox? The Red Sox are a good offense. How about the Yankees? The Yankees are a good offense. The Padres, they're a good offense. I mean, like, there are enough good offenses, especially on these larger slates, that I don't even care what their median is anymore. I just care that they're in raw talent. You take a look at that Blue Jays lineup now. Like, it's murderer's row for the most part. They got rid of Paddock now, so now even he's not even, right? See, I mean, you have Semien, Bichette, Guerrero, Teoscar Hernandez, Springer, Biggio, Grichuk. Typically the catcher sucks.
And when they get the day off, like you said, now Panic's gone and it's Corey Dickerson who's just going to come in and hit too. Like that, yeah, like you said, they have one bad spot and it's the catcher. And even then, like on DraftKings, those guys are cheap. And so if you need them to toss into your stack, it's like, well, they're always going to have guys on base in front of them. So what's the worst thing that could happen?
Right. So I look for those situations, and you find them truthfully, you find them every slate. You find high ceiling, good offensive teams against pitchers that maybe people don't want to. They a lot of people approach MLB DFS from I think this is very similar to what you preach in best ball. Okay, I'm going to relate it to what you've been going through. People in MLB a lot of times are looking to attack pitchers, right? Now, obviously, that causes the change in a team's projection. Facing Matt Harvey boosts the projection of the team of the batters. I mean, naturally, as it is, right? Right, I get it, but it's already factored in the projections already. The weak pitcher, but they go. I want to attack Carlos Martinez. I want to attack this guy. I don't want to attack. I don't. Yeah, it's like Jose Berrios. It's like he's not an ace, but I don't want to attack him. Right? Yeah, they do. They think in terms of that. They don't think in terms of what needs to happen in order for you to win first place. Right? It's very similar to what you say about best ball.
Yeah.
When like you have to assume that every choice you made is correct in your lineup. Right? So when I stack 5 bats against Jose Berrios, I'm playing for the outcome, the win condition that Berrios gets killed, right? I'm playing for that. Or he gets knocked out of the game in the second inning and the bullpen gives up a bunch of stuff also.
Right.
Right? I'm already playing for that win condition. And the offense is naturally good enough. If you were to replace, if it's Jose Berrios versus the Blue Jays or something like that, and you go, I don't want to attack that. I'd rather play the Red Sox against garbage pitcher or something like that at 5 times the ownership, 3 times the ownership, whatever. And I look at the Blue Jays and I go, if you took out Berrios and you put in random name pitcher with a random projection that, like, just if it was just an average pitcher, like not a gas can, but not anyone that you consider good in any way, wouldn't the Blue Jays be just as owned? I mean, I'm playing for the condition that Berrios isn't even going to be pitching for half the game, right? Wouldn't
Right.
I want to be playing against the bullpen with the Blue? Now, do you like the Blue? Oh, no, well, now I like them. Well, that is the ceiling outcome. Like that, the median may be lower, but the ceiling outcome is that outcome. And I'm playing a good team. If I play the Diamondbacks against Carlos Martinez and Martinez walks 6 guys, gives up 4 runs in 82 pitches, and then comes out of the game, and then gets the Cardinals bullpen, like the Diamondbacks are still a bad offense. Like they still have to capitalize on the pitcher's bad outcome. And if you had a choice between, do you want to play the Diamondbacks at 2% owned or the Blue Jays at 2% owned? I'll play the Blue Jays. I don't care if it's up against the better pitcher, right? Because my win condition is that they need to score 10 runs as it is. So, yes, it's less likely that Berrios gets killed, but it's enough so that the percentage that the ownership makes it worth it. And at least they're a good offense, right? If Berrios got killed by the Blue Jays, would anyone say, wow, I can't believe how bad Berrios was? They'd say, no, the Blue Jays are the Blue Jays, right? If Aaron Judge and Stanton and Gary Sanchez and Gleyber Torres go back to back to back to back against who, doesn't even matter who the pitcher is. You go, well, they're playing at Yankee Stadium, the short porch or whatever, and, fly ball pitcher, and oh, well, that's what happens, right? Robbie Ray comes out and gives up 4 home runs to the Yankees, but it's Robbie Ray. Who cares, right? Why are you scared to play these teams if they're good offenses, especially when I believe if we did a distribution, Eric, I don't know. Maybe someone could do this. I'm gonna make the assumption it's correct. My hypothesis is correct. That if you increased like if you decrease pitching performance as a whole, if you did it neutral to the pitcher, like we don't do it based on pitch types or their previous spin rate or anything. If we just said that if we have to knock down pitchers by 10% and we have to knock up all offenses by 10% at its midpoint, this is all at its median. What would the distribution of all the teams look like? Yes, the bad teams do get a boost, but I think that on the tail end, on the front end, on the 70th, 80th percentile outcomes, the good teams would be higher in proportion than the bad teams just because they're better hitters. So if that hypothesis is correct, Eric, shouldn't we be more inclined to do what I am doing and go, well, if we have a lot of high totals on this slate, this looks like a slate where a 240, 50-point score on DraftKings is going to win, it's unlikely it's going to come from the Marlins. It's unlikely that now a low-scoring slate, like what we've used to talk about, low-scoring slates, the Marlins could put up 7 runs at cheap price and be the winning stack on a low-scoring slate. But if we're seeing high-scoring slates, how often are the Marlins going to put up 12 runs to beat out the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, the Reds, the Padres? I mean, I could list off of really good offenses. The Braves, the Twins. Like, to me, that's much less likely. Even though, maybe the Marlins put up 8 runs. You're happy. You stack Duvall. You take your Brian Anderson if he's in the lineup. I don't even Jazz Chisholm. And they're in the 7:05 game, right? And you see in the first inning, they put up 5 runs. You're like, I got the Marlins, baby. Got the Marlins. By the end of the game, they have 8 runs. You're like, I got the Marlins at almost no ownership. They put up 8 runs. And then at 8:30, the Blue Jays have 10 runs. The Yankees have 11 runs, right? The Cardinals, they're a horrible offense, but I mean, whatever. You see a bunch of teams
Yes,
that
they
also
are.
have 8 to 10 runs, and it's like the value of the Marlins just plummets. Like, how
Yeah,
often will
I
they be
think,
the highest scoring in a high offensive environment? Not as often.
and I expect home runs to follow because, like you said, the exact thing that you said, when the better offenses with more, especially typically have more power, right? Because in order to score more runs, you're not just hitting a bunch of slap singles; they're driving the ball, right? So when the pitching quality decreases, the hitter, like, this change in baseball has not changed the hitter ability. The hitters are still the hitters. They have not, nothing has changed, but they are now getting, basically, we lowered the difficulty level, right? You're playing a video game, you're playing MLB The Show, and you lowered it from all-star to whatever.
And this is
The
not, and I
medium,
just
your
want to be
medium
clear. I
difficulty.
want to be clear, Eric. We're not just talking about the pitcher crackdown and the spin rate. We're also just talking
Yeah.
about the weather's getting hot and offensive
Hmm.
production goes up because the ball travels farther, right? So
Exactly.
this is not just, this
Exactly.
could apply to previous seasons. I mean, this is not just pitching
And
quality.
as you get further into the year, we're seeing this already. Like, pitchers are hurt, and teams are going to 6-man rotations now, right? That's something that we haven't really seen before. The quality of pitcher, not even just the fact that they can't use their spider tech and all that stuff. The quality of pitcher, once you get into the dog days of summer, is bad. I can attest to the I'm a Cardinals fan. I live in St. Louis. They picked up Wade LeBlanc, got cut by the Orioles. Then he went to the Rangers and got cut by the Rangers, and now he's starting. He's
Right, the
starting for the
Rangers have no
Cardinals, right?
problem trotting out Jordan Lyles every 5 days, right? Right, they have no
Yep.
problem, right? That Carlos Martinez is coming out every 5 days for the Cardinals. Brad Keller's coming out every 5 days for the Royals because, and you go, these guys suck, and it's like, yeah, but and because they're the
Who
best
else?
of what they currently have. So imagine who's the fourth starter for these teams.
The Cardinals don't have Adam Wainwright. Everybody in St. Louis thinks Adam Wainwright's fucking Cy Young because he doesn't get blown up every day because they're so used to watching Martinez and John Gant and Johan Oviedo, and we're picking up frickin' Wade LeBlanc off the street starting every fifth. I mean, but that's the perfect, like, picture of, like you said, it's not just, sure, that has an impact, right? Like, we're hearing every single night the pitchers complaining about, Garrett Richards is out there freestyling on the mound. The reports he's, like, inventing new pitches while he's out there on the mound, and, like, it's just bizarre. But there's all these factors, right? It's the weather is insane. The pitching quality is way down. The pitchers, are at a disadvantage from how they started the year with the substances they can use. Blah 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 blah. So all of that is exactly what you just said. The hitters are still the same level of hitter that they were before, but we ratcheted down the difficulty level of what they're having to face. Well, who is going to be able to take advantage of it more easily, right? If Steph Curry got to shoot wide open threes every game, and Giannis got to shoot wide open threes every game, who's going to make more, right? It's just like, is Ohtani going to hit more home runs, or is Josh Rojas going to hit more,
Right,
more home
Giannis
runs?
can't
Like,
even hit
with
wide
fucking
open
Ohtani.
free throws.
Yeah, Giannis isn't even going to hit the rim, right? So what's Josh Rojas? Josh Rojas is that, right? Is Drupal Cabrera. Who's going to hit more home runs? Clearly, Kyle Schwarber is going to hit more home runs when we ratchet down the difficulty level. And so, to your point, the advantage of those hitters and those offenses specifically is, like, so much higher. However, the field hasn't really totally adjusted to that. Yes, we'll see, like you said, the Astros, wash, rinse, repeat, whatever decent offense is playing the Orioles, right? Everyone's going to gravitate to those, but they're not gravitating to the other spots. And we're even getting these other situations, like Garrett Richards, like I mentioned. Garrett Richards has been awful all year. He's been terrible all year. He's somehow worse, even worse now, because he doesn't get to use whatever he was using. And he's, like, telling everyone, he's, like, taking interviews, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. He's like,
Yeah. I was surprised the other day when he pitched. The Royals were they were owned, but they were much less owned than I
yeah.
expected them to be.
Right. And so I played them, and it was the perfect, because it was like your Marlins example. They came out and beat the shit out of him early and didn't score. They actually lost the game. They didn't score the rest of the game. But to your point, we're also getting examples like that where the Royals are maybe not the best example at full strength. When they have Mondesi and they have all these guys, I think they're a little bit better. Right now, they're not.
They've enough.
Awesome.
When they're better, they have enough. The Royals have enough power in their lineup that I don't mind playing them. They're very frustrating because they have a lot of low woba hit. They have a lot of, when you're rostering Jorge Soler and Hunter Dozier, you're going put the ball into play, please. But the problem comes in is that I'm not looking like the difference is that Nicky Lopez, Calvin Gutierrez, those guys at the bottom and stuff. Michael Taylor has power. I don't mind Michael Taylor.
Yes. I played him the other day.
Right, and he's always cheap. He's $2,300 today. Yep. I'm probably going to play him again.
Yep.
Those are the guys that I almost want to avoid. Avoid even in stacks like the Angels. Like you mentioned, the Angels. The Angels are an awful team. The Angels. It's like to me the Angels currently right now. They basically have three. I think they have 3.5 batters in their lineup. They got Ohtani, they got Rendon,
the MVP. They
got Walsh, and then occasionally Taylor Ward. Right? Right.
Yeah,
That's the half a batter. But everyone else in their lineup is just like a $2,200 player that you put in your stack. But the problem comes in. We had the slate the other day where I don't know if I've ever seen it before. That within less than an hour of the slate starting, every single slot in your lineup available had a home run in it. Like every single slot, like a catcher, a first baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, a third, and 3 outfielders. Within 45 minutes,
it was,
you could fit. There is a lineup like that, right? Because typically that's what you look like. That's why when especially with one-offs, like those scarce positions, you don't mind if you could get a home run in a scarce position, that puts you greatly above the field if you could find it. So when one of those cheap catchers hits a home run, and you have them, that's a very big benefit to you, right? Shortstop's a little bit more of a power position now because we got Tatis and Trey Turner and Correa. We got some shortstops. But when you're sitting there, especially on DraftKings where there's no utility, when you're sitting there going, "Oh, I have Emmanuel Rivera in my Royal stacks for 2,000, sitting at 3 points." That isn't bad if no other third baseman has a home run. If the highest third baseman only has 12 points, you could win a GPP like that. But once I see third basemen start hitting home runs, then I got a problem. But in an environment now where we're seeing a lot more offense, we should be able to expect a lot more offense. Should we? Here's the question. Should we be less inclined to stack with those players rather than leave a guy, than not play a 5-man, not play a 4-man on FanDuel? Where if I'm gonna let's say I'm gonna stack the Angels, for instance, on FanDuel, 4-man, and I go, and then still fit a 3-man, still fit another stack with it. Is there a point in playing David Fletcher in this environment? In a low-scoring slate, in a low-scoring environment, David Fletcher going 3 for 4 with a run, that type of game, slap hitting, getting on base when Ohtani hits the home run, I don't mind. But when scores on FanDuel are going to be 280, 300, even 12 points out of that position may not be good enough. I would have been better off.
100%.
Right, I would have been better off, let's say, especially in the outfield, because there's a lot more outfielders. Do I play in the outfield? Think of a slap-hitting outfielder type of guy. Do I play that guy in my stack, or do I play Gregory Polanco at 2,300 on FanDuel or something? And it's this guy strikes out 40% of the time, right? But at least as a one-off, it's that guy can hit a home run. But to play Juan Lagares in my Angel stacks, I know he hit a home run at Yankee Stadium or whatever, but it's just not going to happen that often, right? Unless obviously you have the Astros bullpen and Robel Garcia pitching to the Orioles. That was a little bit frustrating last night. All the bottom of the order Orioles stacks get there with the cheap hitters, right?
Yep.
Because the Astros decide to turn into the Orioles bullpen. But that's rarely going to happen. Having like Ramon Urias in your Orioles stack, like most likely on a high scoring slate, like 6 points ain't going to cut it. It's like you got everything right. My best lineup on FanDuel yesterday had Randall Grichuk with 6 points in my Blue Jays stack. I knew that wasn't going to be good. And Randall Grichuk is a power hitter. So it's not like I rostered some slap guy or something. It's just like 6 points in my outfield, just on a high scoring slate, is just not going to do it. Should we be more considerate of that? Or should we either, a lot of the times, especially in lineup HQ, those slap hitting type of hitters with lower projections, I click the only in stacks button, right? So it's like, okay, I don't mind playing them in stacks, but not as a one-off. Should I be more inclined to, instead of clicking the OIS button, just click the X button and just go, don't even bother playing these guys at all?
I really do think so, and that's not what I would have said, and that's not how I played. Like even not that long ago, in this MLB season, like I actually thought, going back to your like vomit stacks and that kind of concept, I actually thought that was a huge edge before, even like maybe in this season. Like towards the beginning of the season, being willing to, we've talked about this, instead of everybody will gravitate to the same guy, right? I always use Austin Meadows. It always seems to be Austin Meadows.
Well, we had
right?
Ben Gamble yesterday batting third in cores, right? Everyone played him as a one-off and got zero. Marquez almost had a no-hitter, right?
Yeah, right.
But he's Ben fucking Gamble, for crying out loud.
Yeah. That's bad, but everybody would still gravitate towards this. Is again, I'm going back to like maybe closer to the beginning of the season. Austin Meadows would go hitless for 5 games, and all of a sudden he goes from 5K to 3,500, right? And he's facing Matt fucking Harvey, and so Austin, everybody, you need a $3,500 outfielder. Everybody's using Austin Meadows. So if you had some cheap guy, it wasn't ideal to be playing this crappy hitter at 3K or whatever over Austin Meadows. But he can go over 4 and you get your 10 or 12, you get the ceiling 10 or 12 point game from that guy and you pass so many of the field. It was much more viable then, and definitely in years past, like you've mentioned with like vomit stacks. Right now, the problem is that it's, even if you get the Juan Lagares home run, right? Even if you get the Ramon Urias home run, there are so many other guys putting up those points. Right? Like you mentioned just a couple nights ago, we're 45 minutes into the slate, and you probably could have rostered, you could have had a team that had a home run from every single spot in your lineup. And that was like the second wave of games hadn't even started yet. We only got like 6 games going.
Right. And it's so only the first 3 innings of the first game. I mean, it's like, it's only a third of the games of the first games even in, like, right? And then several of those guys hit the second home run, and then you're sitting there going, well, if you don't have Schwarber, Ohtani, and Hunter Renfroe, just close your laptop. Like they're too owned.
I did close my laptop quite early, yeah.
Right, and then you also need home runs in all your other slots, and you're sitting there going, why do I have David Fletcher in my lineup? Why like the strategy we talked about previously are better for low scoring slates, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about that all the time in any sport, that it's easier to win the low scoring slates, right?
That's the goal, like especially in, that's the goal of a contrarian DFS player, and in particular for me in smaller fields, I want that winning score to be as low as possible, right? So that's kind of where this is all coming from. Is those are the slates I'm trying to win, but what I assume that you're probably going to say is like, they're very infrequent now compared to what they have been in the past.
I think people think of low scoring slates. The variable that controls that is the ownership, right? So we think in terms of the reason why a slate would be low scoring is because some high owned guy got a 0, right? Some high owned pitcher got blown up, right? So a lot of the field got pushed down because 40% ownership is on Austin Meadows and he got a 0, right? 50% of the ownership is on Garrett Cole and he's sitting there with 9 points. So it's very easy to flip and get past if you don't have those guys in your lineup. The problem comes in now is that we're having in MLB, low scoring slates when it comes to ownership, but it doesn't mean the scores are low. So it's like, yes. So if, like, for instance, yesterday or whatever day, it doesn't matter. Kyle Schwarber is chalk and he hits a home run. If you don't have him, that still doesn't mean anything. There may be 58 home runs today. Like, so if Schwarber's sitting there with 18 points, even if he's high owned or low owned, you're most likely going to need a home run worth of points in like all your slots anyway. Regardless if like I played like Juan Soto the other day, and he was like 2.8% owned. Right? Yesterday, the national stack. And it was lefty with Rich Hill, right? So I played him, and he was a one-off in some line, 22 points, 2% owned. What does the ownership matter? Like Judge had a home run. Like all these guys had home. Like 1% owned guys had home runs. 10% guys has home. Like the ownership of these players didn't even matter because there were so many home runs hit or home runs worth of 20+ point scores. That yes, maybe you needed Semien because he had 50 points. Maybe on FanDuel you needed Ohtani because he had 40.
Yep.
Those are the must-haves because they get enough points that. And they're owned enough, right? Ohtani's 12% owned on FanDuel with 40 points. You're probably going to need him. Schwarber double dong at 24% owned. Yes, you're probably going to need him. But like getting a home run, having the 10% owned guy fail and the 2% owned guy succeed, like doesn't lower the scores of the slate. It just changes the distribution of the points. We're seeing enough 2% owned guys hit home runs that you're going to still need 3. You're going to still need 3 in your outfield. And whether you take the 24% owned guy that hit a home run or the 2% owned guy that hit a home run, the leverage, you're not gaining any relative, you're truthfully, you're not even gaining any relative value because you still need to find power. You need to find this upside. So I'm thinking, and what I've been doing with the only in stacks, and now I'm kind of more transitioning to maybe even Xing these guys out, especially on FanDuel where the pricing is a bit softer, and I could get power. I don't have to pay $2,200 for Fletcher when I could find a power hitter for $2,200 on some team. He may be a crappy team, but someone that what I'll do is I'll go into lineup HQ and I'll look at the home run odds, like just whatever the betting line is on home runs. It's just like anyone over like plus 500 or something like that, or plus 600 or something, whatever, just X out, right? Just plus 1050. I don't care. I don't care if he's. I do not care whatsoever. Just if you have limited chance of hitting a home run, especially on a large slate where I could find. Yes, if we're talking about a 6-game slate, you have to be a little bit. Then you could be a little bit more broad. Now, the more likely that a low scoring slate happens. Could happen on a 6-game slate. 10, 12, 15-game slates coming into the summer. Half the games, 90 degrees. More than half the games has the 4th starting pitcher or the guy from AA that we've never heard of. Or the short reliever opening into the bad bullpen. Yep. I mean, when we have Lakin starting for the Orioles, we going like, what? When they're trotting out Garrett Richards for no apparent reason because there's no one else to put out there, there's going to be there's going to be high scoring even if it comes from 1% owned teams. That like what? Oh, should I be playing Kai Tom in my Pirate stacks? Like, look, dude, I'm barely playing the Pirates. Let alone should I be playing a guy with like plus 850 home run odds in the stack? Now, obviously, on occasion they'll hit one. Yeah, you're right. It'll happen. Juan Lagares hit a home run, but from a long term, looking for expected value, isn't it much different than back in April where we had 58-degree games and we had half the starting pitchers in the league weren't injured, right?
Yeah.
Right? Then we started seeing totals where like if there was one team with like a 5.3 run total, we were like, that's the chalk. 5.3 run total, implied run total, like on yesterday's slate, I think was like the 6th or 7th highest. Like that's the contrarian. That's like, oh, okay, that's not high enough now.
Yeah, right.
But I don't think I'm not sure if the field is necessarily react. I think. Do you think the field is going to force those 5-man, like those 5-man angel stacks where you're like, okay, I'm playing Otani, I'm playing Walsh, I'm playing uh, Rendon, and without Upton or Trout back or anything, they're just like, well, I guess I'm playing Luis Rengifo and Max Stassi. And I guess you could play Stassi because he's a catcher and whatever. And
Yeah.
he's like if there's gonna be 5 teams that put up 10 runs today, like it's most likely not gonna be it's like how does this win? Wouldn't they might just be better off
And
just using
and
the Angels as a 3-man and that's it?
and how you put up those 10 runs is important, right? David Fletcher is never going to do what Marcus Semien did. Just not gonna. No, I don't care how many runs the Angels score. I'm not sure David Fletcher can score 50 fantasy points. It's just like not really possible. And like I will say, I played what they had, like whatever the like 888 or whatever it was on Monday, and I don't know why the Rengifo, however the hell you say that scrub's name. I remember I'm scrolling through a few teams because I was probably pretty dead, but it was when Michael Taylor hit his home run. I'm like, oh, okay, I made up a couple points. Maybe I'm not closing the laptop just yet. And I'm scrolling through teams, and I happened to see multiple Angel stacks because Otani had hit a home run, and they were starting to score some runs. And like that Rengifo is like in a bunch of them. And so it's a totally like I'm just cherry picking one little example, but you're seeing even, this is a 500-man field or whatever it is. You're seeing 400, 500-man field, and you are still seeing people, include these guys. So is it to the extent that they were including them before? I don't know, but I think one of the biggest things, and I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, is like really similar to what you mentioned up. Like, are people still going to do this, or are people not going to do this with this whole where we're at with offense right now, but especially as it relates to like the foreign substance stuff. It's almost like overhyped at this point, but people are picking and choosing when they are reacting to it.
Right.
Right.
Some
Garrett Cole,
pitchers,
oh my
some
God, the
pitchers are
world.
using the sticky stuff, and some people are. Right. Well, is he a cheater? Is
Yes.
he not a cheater? No one to me. I think very similar. A lot of the stuff that you've been saying in best ball applies to like just game theory in general. And I saw your
That's
reply
all it is. Yeah.
with Neil Orfield. Right. It's like this past year, the more and more you talk, the more and more me and you sound the same. More and more right? The more and more you're like,
Yep.
just pick whoever you want. Who cares? What is this all? It's all nihilistic. It all seems like what does any of this matter? But you are right that if we don't know, unless you have some type of insider information, all the field is going to do if you do that is just you're just going to create you're purposely creating bias. Instead of
Yes.
just saying that in the long
100%.
run, I should just treat it as one neutral factor, and then just wherever it goes. And to me, the more bias I see, the more likely I just go the other way.
Yep. And that's what people are like. And smart people, they're like, well, we can look at the spin rates, we can look at their velocity, we can look at all this, that, and the other. And like, I'm not even saying that you might be able to get some things right. It's just your accuracy level. You're just not going to know. And even if you might have been right, okay, I keep using Garrett Richards because he's the easy example, because we definitely know he's struggling with it because he told us. But like, you look at Garrett Richards, Dylan Bundy. They were someone I was talking to was using Dylan Bundy as an example because his spin rate was way down, velo was even down, but all the indicators, right? He had every indicator that he was cheating before or whatever, and he was struggling with it. He comes into the next start. He actually looked quite fine. I think he was up 0-2 on like every hitter to start the game or whatever, and then he starts blowing chunks out on the mound and gets pulled. It's like, well, it didn't matter. Maybe you were right, maybe you were wrong. I have no idea, but it ended up not mattering. Or Dylan Bundy could have been struggling with it, and then he could change something in between that start. Right? Maybe the pitchers have found something new to use, or he changed a grip. Right? Tyler Glasnow was talking before he got injured, was talking about because he had his like the best start of his year after he stopped using whatever he was using, and they interviewed him and he talked about it. He's like, I had to change my grip, and he went out and he struck out like 12 guys, like 12 guys. It was like the best start of his season. It ended up hurting his arm, but the point remains, like, these guys are you don't think that they know, like, you don't think that Garrett Richards knows that he like has to make some sort of adjustment. So you're just never going to know. You could be right and end up wrong in the game of DFS that we're playing. So you're just never going to know accurately enough, right? We've talked about it like with BVP. It's like, it's real. We know the foreign substance thing is real, just like we know BVP is real. It's just, how the hell are we ever going to be able to predict who it's affecting? Like, it affected Glasnow. He told us, and he still went out and had the best start of his season. It could be affecting DeGrom for all that we know, but he's just that good that it doesn't matter. Or maybe the next start when he comes back, when DeGrom comes back, he gets blown up because maybe he did need whatever. I mean, we just don't know. So to your point,
some pitchers that actually are better without it. They find the right. Some
right.
average pitchers are like, I've been trying to do this for 3 years, and now that I can't do it this way, I found a new version of a pitch or something, and now I'm more effective at generating ground balls or something, and now I'm throwing more.
Carlos
How are you ever
Martinez.
going to know any of that?
Maybe this is finally what Carlos Martinez needed to turn it around. That's why he finally pitched well, or the Diamondbacks really suck. But like, you're just not gonna know. And so, like, it's not even worth your time to think about. What is worth your time to think about, like relating it back to what we were talking about, is like, what are our opponents doing with that information, right? Are they just like, fuck it, Garrett Cole sucks now, right? I can't play Garrett. That's not what they're doing. They've been playing Garrett Cole. But if they were to say, like, all right, I'm done.
Is Shane Bieber going to be rostered on his first start back without a pitch count? Because obviously his first start back, he may be on a 70 pitch count and you wouldn't play him anyway. He'll be 10K and there's no reason to do that. But what I'm waiting for, this is what I, as a contrarian GPP player, as someone that doesn't buy into small sample sizes as much as the field does. They could exist. They don't. I mean, that's the point that we're making. You don't know what's real in a small sample size. It could be real. It makes sense that it could be real, but you won't know when it is until the sample size gets bigger. So what I'm hoping for is that Bieber comes back, pitches 75 to 80 pitches on his first start, walks 3 guys, gives up 4 runs. Like, but not like, doesn't do horrible, but doesn't do good, right?
Yeah.
And then the next start, like, they say he's not on a pitch count. DraftKings lowers his price to 8,800 and he's 7% owned. And then I'm going to roster him, and I hope he goes 7 innings and throws 12 strikeouts. Right? Right? Like, that's what I'm hoping for. I don't want he pitches 70 pitches, gets 8 strikeouts in 5 innings efficiently, and it's like, okay, I guess Bieber wasn't a cheater. And then the next start, he's underpriced and everyone plays. Like, but these are the types of things you, in small sample sizes, like, you have it, to get back to your best ball. The stuff that you've been saying about best ball relates to so many games, DFS wise, and just games in general, that the two main things that you're doing in DFS, the biggest edges in DFS are exploiting biases of other people, basically exploiting overconfidence, especially when the overconfidence has to do with small samples. Right? Yep. So that's essentially look, there's really no biases in long-term samples, right? There's no like a 10-year
because we know what's true.
Right. But even depending on the pitch, like, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be a good quarterback this coming year. Like, that's not controversial. But like there's a difference between saying that and saying Andy Dalton's leading the Bears to the Super Bowl. Like that's but even Andy Dalton, we have a long-term sample size. Like Trey Lance, who knows? Trey Lance could be horrible. He could be great. Yep. But all I care about is, what does everyone else think? And it's such a high variance situation. I'm just going to go with whatever the field isn't going to do. We have these running back situations with teams where it's like, by the end of the year, one of these 3 running backs maybe like, everyone thinks it's going to be this guy, and it ends up being this other guy, right? Or it ends up
Yep.
being a mess the entire season, and none of them are worth even taking at all. It becomes a just complete mess. Or the team just sucks. Just like, oh, they were 10-6 last year, and now they're 3-13 or whatever. And it's like now it didn't matter what the running back, because none of them, it didn't matter. They were down all the time.
Yep.
Uh,
That's
but
the Raiders. That's my Raiders. That's my Raiders take this
that's
year
your Josh Jacobs take.
Anyone listening to the place. That's the Jacobs and Waller and all these guys. They're all still expensive, and I think the Raiders are going to suck. But to your point, the market isn't valuing the Raiders as if they suck, and I'm looking at them like, how the fuck are these guys going to win any games? And everybody's taking all their players, relatively high.
Right, but it's the same concept of what are people overconfident in? What are if they're the more and more, if on the next slate Garrett Cole's ownership goes down to 10%, you know who I'm playing a lot of? Garrett Cole. I mean,
yep.
Why wouldn't I? Like, oh, but the past 2 starts. Well, there you go. Your overconfidence in small sample sizes. Then we have Carlos Martinez, right? He was 1.5% owned on DraftKings yesterday at like 6K, right? And he's been horrible this year. I mean, he's been fucking awful. But he's had like 2 starts that he was good at. But we also have a large.
So he has that, right? And it's the perfect example for the small sample thing, because he will go those couple starts or several starts, like leading into last night, where like we know he's been terrible. Everyone can see that he's been terrible. But he was facing the Diamondbacks, and like he's not Matt Harvey. He's really bad. But like Matt Harvey is physically incapable of a good outing. Carlos Martinez against the Diamondbacks, like it's in there. It's possible. It's in there somewhere. And so like it could be worth, at that ownership, at that price, it can be worth taking that shot on Carlos Martinez. Now, the next start, it's like I enjoyed you for those 3 hours. Like I never want to see your name again. But it's that small sample thing. It's like, look, he's not physically incapable of having to start. He's pretty bad, and like it's not going to happen very often. But if no one's going to do it against the worst offense in the league, like okay, maybe that's when I'm going to take my shot.
Right. Vince said Vinny Velasquez also. Yes, I played a whole ton of him. Right. I've been like.
I can't believe how low owned he was.
I was befuddled at the DK ownership. FanDuel, I understood. Like FanDuel had a ton. He was 5% on FanDuel, but he was 6,100 on FanDuel. And then like how you could pay up for everything. I mean, like you don't need to spend that little on pitcher on FanDuel with their pricing. But when you have to pay for 2 pitchers on DraftKings, he was 7% owned against the Marlins. And I go, what, dude? Maybe I should have played more DraftKings yesterday. But these are pitchers we're talking about. Carl, if I were to say to you, this is a good way to put it. If I were to say to you, Eric, 4 years ago, Velasquez and Carlos Martinez are on the slate and they're both 6K, you'd be like, why wouldn't they be chalked? Right? Because these are pitchers these aren't like new pitchers. They've been pitching for a multitude of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, are they as good as they were 4 years ago? No. I give them that. But they still have enough of a body of work that they are an above average pitcher that at that price on DraftKings, they shouldn't be single digit owned. But what we have is guys like Alek Manoah and James Kaprelian and Eli Morgan after his first start. Like people like small sample size, screw it, gotta roster them. It's like, I just go the other way. They're a rookie. Who the hell? Who knows who these people? These are guys that 2 years from now, if you mention their name and you go, who are these people? Are they bagging groceries? They could be. I mean, like that's how we don't know how good they really are. So I'm just take advantage of the confidence of the small sample size. Will you get burned? Sure. Is Kyle Schwarber going to hit a home run every first pitch of every game? No, he's not. But I'm at 20% ownership. I'll okay. And if he hits the home run, I close the laptop. That's fine, right? But he shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be. You're exploiting the overconfidence in all of these games. We see in NBA in playoffs I know I haven't been playing the NBA Showdown, but I've been keeping track. Like NBA Showdown in the playoffs is, I don't know why I'm not playing it, because it seems like okay, whatever happens in game one, people just build lineups as if game one is going to happen again. Like that, I just don't understand. It's like, oh, this is what happened. Like it's whoever shot well, whoever got 10 rebounds, whoever came in the rotation at that point, based on that, like, oh, we're just going to play it that way. And then the second game, then what ends up happening? It's this delusion and psychosis. It almost seems like a mass delusion that happens to people. Like the whole field, like the mass delusion of, and I say it in NFL, right? I say this is what I typically, because it's a week to week thing, right? I consider the mass delusion, what we have, the military industrial complex. NFL DFS in general, it's the mass delusion complex. And I got to make sure to write that down for the title. The mass delusion complex. Because in NFL DFS, what ends up happening is that, okay, so prices come out Sunday night, right? Monday, right? Something like that. You take a look, right? You look, see, right? You go, okay, this guy seems a little underpriced. That guy, see, okay, this guy maybe, you start putting together some type of dummy lineup. You go, okay. You look at the totals of the games, and you go, oh, okay, this could be good. Then on Tuesday, what people end up starting to do, they start looking at snap counts, right? You get the target shares of just the last game, right? The last game stuff, the formations. You look at PFF grades. You look at it. There's only been one game. This is week 2. It's week 2 of the goddamn season, right? Everything in week 1, they're breaking it down. 21 carries. This guy got 7 targets. They go through all of that. Then Wednesday, they listen to some shows. They listen to that. They read Evan Silva's matchups column, right? And that has a million things or whatever in it of what happened last week. And then Thursday, they okay, now I'm putting together stacks and whatever. They're analyzing what the practice reports. Friday, now we're thinking about that and ownership. We're going through, they go through all of that stuff. And then on Sunday, the games, they go through all that whole fucking process. And then Sunday, half the stuff doesn't make any fucking sense. Right? It's almost like half the stuff that happens is just fucking random. Like, how could have anyone predicted that? How could have an injury happens? Who knows about that? The team that was a 17-point dog is up by 30 points for no apparent reason. I remember that Bills-Vikings game from, 2 years ago or something, right? They were like the biggest, they're up, right? And that happens. We know that. Half the stuff you see makes no sense, right? You go, how did this team rush the ball for 238 yards as the worst rushing team against the best rushing defense? Best rushing defense on what? There's only been one goddamn week. What the fuck do we know? We don't know anything. Even after fucking 10 weeks, we don't know anything. And then what ends up happening is that the delusion, Eric, the complex that happened, the mass delusion complex, is not that. It's that on Monday, everyone starts doing the same goddamn thing again. Like no one gets to the realization that most of this stuff is such a small sample size that any data you look at is going to be fucking flawed to some extent. So it's much better to look at what everyone else is doing and just assume variance and just embrace the goddamn variance of small sample sizes and just exploit other people's overconfidence. And in baseball, in the NBA playoffs, it's everyone, oh, what happened last game? This guy came. It's the same goddamn thing. And then everyone goes, I'm going to make lineups. I know people are going to meet. Lou Williams is going to be, everyone's going to own Lou Williams the next game or whatever. Giannis is going to be out or something. Oh, it's Middleton and whatever. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? We've had people in the NBA playoffs that don't play one game and then come out and play 32 minutes the next game and are in the rotation. And then you go, and then
Cam Reddish just did that.
Right. And then what's going to end up happening is that he's priced too low the next slate. People are going to go like, well, obviously I'm going to have to play like lock Reddish into all my lineups. And it's quite possible. There's a non-zero chance that he literally DNPs. A non-zero chance. Now, he probably doesn't if Trae Young's out. But there's a but his range of outcomes, he could play 32 minutes. He could also play 6 minutes. He could also not play at all, right? He could also play 40 minutes. But because of that one game, he may be like 72% owned on a NBA Showdown slate. Everyone's looking at the last game going, well, obviously he's coming out and playing 32 minutes, right? And then what ends up happening is that he plays 8 minutes. Everyone on Twitter goes on tilt. And then whoever came in and played more minutes than now Bogdan, he puts up some ceiling score. And it's like, right? Solomon Hill has a good game for no fucking reason, right? Like that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then he's owned 50%. Like, don't do that.
And
like
then he sucks, and then Herder does it the next game. Yeah.
Do you think this mass delusion complex happens because like you're the human side? I know me and you are sounding alike now. You're becoming more like me. So I want to try to become a little bit more like you. Talking about the human element. Is it that the human brain is built to detect patterns? Like it's just part of our survival instinct to detect patterns that in order to think of expected value, especially expected value, to think in terms of how to win in an environment of high variance, that the people that do the best are the ones that are able to turn off their reptile brain and accept the fact that there may not be a pattern. Like that things are maybe not random, but there's no data that you could look at that could make something predictable. Because that's what people end up doing even after the fact. Because what they'll do, they'll overfit.
Oh yeah.
Right? So Monday morning on an NFL slate, they'll go back and re-look at data and pick out the points and go, well, yeah, his blocking, this guard's blocking accuracy or something was much lower and I missed it, and that's why this guy was able to fit whole. Like now you're trying to overfit things that don't necessarily exist, just to perpetuate the religion in your head, the worldview that there is a pattern, there is a predictability to all of this, and why people get like fucking tilted from what me and you talk about. We come from the perspective of like that nihilistic kind of, right? That nothing matters, that atheistic type of worldview of like, maybe life doesn't matter. Maybe what's the meaning of the universe? What's the meaning of life? Maybe there is no meaning. Maybe there isn't any goddamn meaning at all. Right? We're just here and we die and that's it. There's nothing. That's it. That's all there is. So just build yourself based on not on what some fake person or something in the sky wants you to do. Maybe there is no guy, right? Maybe just do what you want to do and that's it, type of thing. So do you think it's that human element that people, or they intellect? What ends up happening, I think, a lot of people, especially that would listen to a podcast like this, would intellectualize it. They go, I get exactly what you're saying. It's 2:00 in the afternoon on an MLB slate, right? It's 11 o'clock in the morning for my pregame show. They'll get, you're right. I shouldn't have played Schwarber at 30% owned, even though he did hit 2 home runs. I probably shouldn't have built that type of lineup that way, right? I probably should embrace the fact that who fucking knows what's going to happen. So let's just play the low-owned stuff that still has good hitter. Like they get all of that. Mm-hmm. They get all of that. But like 6:30 comes around. It's like, I don't want to be the one that looks like an idiot when Shohei Ohtani hits 2 home runs and I don't have like they end up, that pattern recognition part of the reptile brain goes off and goes like, I want to be able to rationalize my choices, right? So when there is no pattern to recognize, then people look and go, how do I choose anyone in my lineup? And I go, well, you base it on a long-term sample size. You look at a projection model that takes away the bias and just shows you the data that's predictable. And yes, BVP does exist. We don't know when, right? Spin rate stuff with these pitchers and how they adjust do exist, but we don't know when. So to factor that in would be just adding a bias. So instead of even if you can't quantify it accurately enough, just don't. Just leave it. Just leave it the way it is, and let the field overreact. But what ends up happening is that those reckon that comes back 645. You're like maybe Garrett Richards' new pitch isn't good anymore. I mean, you're like everyone thinks he's Carlos Martinez. Like they're just scared to go. Like Carlos Martinez projects well in this model. The Diamondbacks suck, and he's 1% owned at 6K. And I need a cheap pitcher. And they're like, well, if Carlos Martinez comes out and walks 6 guys and gives up 8 runs, like everyone saw that coming. Everyone saw that coming. So they don't want to be on the part of the side of everyone saw that coming, even though we're trying to portray the fact that seeing it coming may not even exist to that extent. Like, according to his long-term sample size, he's a better pitcher than a $6,000 pitcher against the Diamondbacks. And you just have to live with the fact that maybe the people that are overconfident, maybe they're right on that one start. That doesn't mean you made a bad choice. That just means that, okay, you played a 1% guy that got -9 points and whatever. So do you think it's that? Do you think it's the human thing of like, I know that people intellectualize it. They like, I know what I have to do. And then just they can't click the goddamn button.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's the combination of really both of those two things that you said, and I think those are typically the different people, but sometimes it's that same person, kind of that last person that gets it. I think more frequently, and this is actually something I knew in DFS, but we're in a little bit of a bubble, and like the people that I talk to in general are closer to me and you's line of thinking, like maybe not quite as fucked up as the two of us are, but they're like, look, I understand game theory. I understand, like I talked to Squirrel, right? And I talked to Tuttle, and I talked to Chop, and these guys, they know this stuff. We might all have a different approach to it, but they all know this, right? And even outside of our company, the people that I talk to, they're smart DFS players. I don't have to explain this shit to them. So we get into a little bit of a bubble where I think I kind of lose sight of that human part of it. But that human part of it, to me, like as I've kind of really ventured into this whole best ball space, is just like so blatantly obvious that they need not even just the pattern recognition. It is definitely that when you mention like the pattern recognition, but humans need something. Just give me a data point so that I can like feel good about that's why I need a reason.
Right, you need a reason of why.
Because every time I'd say, yeah, why did this happen? Or why am I like selecting this guy? Why am I putting this guy into my lineup? Like, but I need to see something. It's not just right. The field is doing this, so I'm going to do this because who knows what's going to happen, right? That's pretty much how I'm.
That's how I play. That's you're describing how I play.
My opponents are doing this, or my opponents think this, right? My opponents think Garrett Cole is fucked because of the foreign substance, but they don't think Garrett Richards is. So I'm going to go after Garrett Richards, right? Or whatever. Like there's every slate has a million of those things. And that's all I'm doing. But when you tell somebody you're doing it because I don't know what's going to happen, like, and there's no reason that we can even predict what's going to happen, they're like, well, you're just an idiot. Like, whatever. I'm going to go listen to somebody tell me that Kyle Schwarber's on a hot streak. Right? Like go sign up for this because someone can tell you that Kyle Schwarber hit 16 home runs this month and to play him. Like, congratulations.
Eventually the hot streak comes to an end. So you're either telling me that Kyle Schwarber is going to hit 150 home runs this season because the hot streak never ends, or at some point there's going to be a day that let's say the streak does. I mean, but this is the point that I make. Like, hot streaks, do they exist? Well, it's just variance. So they technically don't exist. But let's say they did exist. How would we ever be able to tell when it's over? So at what point do we stop?
Exactly.
And then you'll have, then you get the sampling bias people. Well, if Schwarber doesn't hit a home run today, then it's like, 16 of his last 19 games he's hit a home run. 16 of his last 20 games is like, at what point is 16 of his last 30 games not enough? I mean, like, that's the point that we're making. But from the human perspective, like, I know that it's a weird like way to slice it up with relating it to religion, but is it the same type of brain processing that gets like, I mean, I don't like go around like spouting it off, but I mean, like, I'm an atheist. Like, I don't believe in. I believe it's not, none of this shit matters, right?
Yeah.
I'm an exist. I'm a more of a like a kind of a nihilist, a moral. I think a moral nihilist type of
Yeah.
mentality. But because of that, I can look at stuff and go, just most when in doubt, uh, shit is most probably random. That's most
Yep.
likely unpredictable to most extents. Oh, some guy got hit by a car. Oh, well, people try to explain that, right? Right? Oh, I got a promotion at work. It was because of like some unrelated thing. It's because I did some nice deed for some old lady or something. Like I helped the old lady cross the street, and now I won the lottery. Like those things have nothing to do with one another. People want to make it out as if they do, but there is no correlation. So people are naturally going to look for, well, this happened because of this, and this happened because of that, and this, and then think that because it happened once, it could happen again. Not realizing that if it was indeed mostly random, then using that data, mostly random data, to then predict the next thing, like how flawed is that? So either you have to accept that it's mostly random, that means everything that you do is going to be mostly random. I say mostly, not fully random. I mean, we could predict stuff, but I mean, we don't have projection models where the R is 1. I mean, no, we'd be trillionaires if we could predict exactly what's going to happen. But I think the main thing is getting away from that mass delusion, getting away from the complex, and once you view the field as the delusion people, I think that's when you get good at GPPs in DFS. You don't
Definitely.
It's not one step. It's not, okay, I don't want to succumb to the delusion. It's no, you also have to look at everyone else and go, what are their delusions? And also accepting the fact that sometimes the delusions get there. A lot of times they do. A lot of times the better percentage plays are the better percentage plays. They may be overowned and they still fucking get there. And you don't have to explain it away. The problem is that when you do lose, you're losing because it's random. You can't say that, well, I lost because I didn't play the best plays. It's like, well, once you agree that there are no best plays, then I feel good. If Ohtani and Schwarber hit a home run today or whatever the hell, any chalk batter, Austin Meadows at 40% owned, like I just closed the laptop. I think that most people are not willing to accept that.
Correct.
Like, if I don't get the guy right and it's high owned, like I don't want to close the laptop at 10 minutes into the slate. It's like me and you are completely willing to close the laptop 3 fucking minutes. Kyle Schwarber's first fucking pitch of the first game, and just going, looks like I'm watching Netflix tonight. Same with you in best ball. You're willing to burn tons of teams on. I'm gonna build my team this way, and if this guy wins the starting running back job, and this guy is whatever, and like your team is dead, you're just like, okay, just burn that team and go to the next one.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Erik Beimfohr on Twitter. You're still coming out with plenty of best ball stuff on Roto Grinders, so check that out there on Blender HD. Blender Ed on Twitter. The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. We talk all about how to exploit variance. It's a very nihilistic course, right? How to do all that stuff. So take it. 15 hours at theoryofdfs.com.